When I started my journey as a doctor, I never imagined I would one day be sitting here and talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. Creating the Chennai Declaration, which was a landmark initiative by medical societies and other stakeholders in India to tackle the challenge of AMR. It's about inspiring others in the medical community to think beyond the clinic, to realize that their knowledge and experience have the potential to drive change. Of balancing clinical and non-clinical job requires a shift in the mindset, broadening of the skills, and most importantly, the courage to step into the unknown. Most doctors are not trained in entrepreneurship, technology development, or even regulatory process. Doctors have a unique perspective that is invaluable in creating solutions for real world problems. Ultimately, the biggest challenge is believing that you, as a doctor, have something valuable to offer beyond the clinic. And trust me, we do, you do, we do gold in the health tech space. Doctors who are willing to collaborate with MedTech entrepreneurs, advisory role, co-founder role, and that's what we need. We need a collaboration and open approach from both sides. India is like an innovation laboratory. It's full of challenges, but also brimming with plenty of opportunities. Big opportunity. Medics need to be entrepreneurs is a global issue, not just an Indian one. Starting a vaccine clinic or a wellness center or a telemedicine platform are not really innovative entrepreneurship. They are conventional entrepreneurship because the delivery models depend on the existing model. In innovative entrepreneurship, we go beyond the comfort. If you don't communicate well, if you can't convince your innovation to the medical community, that innovation is a failure. So becoming a people's man is the secret behind success. Yes, we have all our moments of anger, frustration, especially if you're working with such issues. But at the end of the day, we need to smile.
Welcome to Navig Health Podcast. At Navig, we discuss about various facets of the Indian healthcare ecosystem, ground level challenges and opportunities directly from operators and leaders working in hospitals, pharma, and medtech companies.
Today, we have an extraordinary guest, Dr. Abdul Ghafur. Dr. Ghafur is a leading infectious disease specialist at Apollo Hospitals, Chennai, and one of India's strongest advocates for antimicrobial stewardship. Through his work in education, policy making, and strategic consulting, he has been at the forefront of combating antibiotic resistance and shaping infection control strategies. Beyond his clinical role, he actively engages in non clinical leadership through Quorum Veda consulting services, where he supports hospitals in implementing infection control programs. His work also extends to empowering diagnostic startups, helping them navigate regulatory hurdles, position their innovations effectively, and form strategic industry partnerships. Dr. Ghafur seamlessly straddles the worlds of clinical medicine, mentorship, healthcare strategy, and policy advocacy. Today, he is here to share insights with clinicians in our audience about roles and opportunities beyond hospitals, and most importantly, how to approach and transition into these spaces. Dr. Ghafur, a warm welcome to Navig Health.
Good evening, Dr. Abdul, and a very warm welcome to the Navig platform where we have podcasts with eminent people like you. And we're really happy to have you here with us. And we realize that a lot of your thoughts, your opinions resonate with the core agenda and belief of Navig. So I will start by asking you, Dr. Abdul, you wear so many hats. You are a clinician, you advocate for policy on antimicrobial resistance, you actually make a strong case for why doctors should become entrepreneurs. You, I see, are an avid painter also. And not to mention that you are also supporting a lot of medtechs. And how do you straddle all of this?
When I started my journey as a doctor, I never imagined I would one day be sitting here and talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. I never imagined. I began as a clinician, passionate about treating patients and solving their health problems. But over the years, my focus sharpened around infectious diseases, and that's a field that challenges your intellect, your stamina, and sometimes your patience. it's also incredibly rewarding specialty. One of the challenging moments in my career was my deep involvement in addressing antimicrobial resistance, and we call it as AMR. This AMR is not just a medical problem, it's a complex challenge shaped by socio-economic, political, and scientific factors. I poured years of my years into the AMR related work, drafting policies, advocating for change, and yes, creating the Chennai Declaration, which was a landmark initiative by medical societies and other stakeholders in India to tackle the challenge of AMR from an Indian perspective. I must say, working on AMR made me realize how much collective action means. It's not about an individual, it's about teams, stakeholders, and everyone coming together. But something shifted for me along the journey, and that shift is very important. While we achieved some success in policies and guidelines, the pace of change was slow. I would often describe it as a partial success. But in my heart, I knew we could do more. Then came my role as a jury member for the Longitude Prize. And this was a turning point for me, a real turning point. The Longitude Prize is a £10 million global prize for a revolutionary diagnostic test that could help doctors in all countries detect infections quickly and prescribe correct antibiotic. The 20-member jury, we assessed over 250 applications from teams worldwide. And I was a jury member from India. Assessing these innovative applications, I would say, was a big experience for me. An eye opener. Really an eye opener. It showed me how positive and impactful medical technology startups can be. Watching these innovators, those innovators, they take risk, they fail, they learn, and ultimately create solutions. Then, I couldn't help but think, why can't more doctors doing this? Why aren't we, the doctors, the people closest to these problems, stepping up to create solutions? That thought stayed with me. And Quorum Veda is my way of bridging that gap. Quorum means collective, and Veda means wisdom. The idea is to bring together the collective wisdom of healthcare professionals, startups, experts with the policy making experience, and innovators to create solutions for the challenges we face in healthcare. It's not just about innovation, it's about the collaboration, the collective wisdom. It's about creating a supportive ecosystem where ideas can flourish, doctors can contribute their unique insights, and where startups can find guidance and mentorship they need. And I must stress, my efforts with Quorum Veda are in addition to my full-time work as an infectious disease doctor. I spend majority of my day in clinical practice, managing infections, guiding teams, working with patients, especially those with cancer and immunocompromising infections. Balancing this with Quorum Veda has been a really challenging but deeply fulfilling. It's also a proof that doctors can contribute beyond their traditional roles if they're passionate and determined. And that's about my journey. And much more than that, I would say it's about inspiring others in the medical community to think beyond the clinic, to realize that their knowledge and experience have the potential to drive change. It's not about individual patients, it's for the healthcare system as a whole. And let's not wait for the change, let's create it. I'm a regular, ordinary infectious disease doctor, and I'm trying, making my own humble effort in trying to convince the medical community to become innovative entrepreneurs, to make a change. And trust me, that change will be worth for the medical community.
I read with a lot of interest your paper, which you had explained on why doctors should become entrepreneurs and why we find it so challenging. And I think one of the things that you very rightly called out is inherently our risk taking capabilities and our sense of success and failure is so entrenched from the first day of medicine or from the time we try to become doctors getting into a competitive entrance exam, that the concept of risk and failure is something that we need to redefine in our heads. Could you just talk a little bit more about that, because I think it's very intriguing and very insightful.
Right, that's a very critical question. And it's something many doctors think about but hesitate to act on. How can we transition from clinicians and then do innovative entrepreneurship? That's a work that is daunting. Transitioning into health tech space or balancing clinical and non-clinical jobs requires a shift in the mindset, broadening of the skills, and most importantly, the courage to step into the unknown. You see, as doctors, we are trained to be risk averse. Our clinical training is all about precision, safety, and minimizing uncertainty. But health tech and innovation or entrepreneurship, these require us to embrace risk, accept failure as a part of the process, and learn along the way. This is the first big change, changing the mindset. Doctors need to realize that stepping into non clinical roles doesn't mean abandoning their profession. Of course, no. I'm still a full time infectious disease doctor. I do everything out of the hours after coming back from hospital in the evening, at night, and work. It's applying our expertise into new, impactful ways. Other problem is time. I just mentioned I'm a full-time doctor. It's difficult for me to find time for the innovative entrepreneurship, inspirational activities. Most doctors, especially in countries like India, are overburdened with clinical responsibilities. They are juggling with patient care, administrative tasks, teaching, research. Where is the time for anything else? That's why structured pathways like fellowships or part time roles in health tech startups can bridge this gap. Doctors need an environment that allow them to explore these roles without completely stepping away from their clinical work. Then we have a knowledge gap. Let's face it, we have a knowledge gap. Most doctors are not trained in entrepreneurship, technology development, or even regulatory process. These are critical in the health tech space. Learning these skills can be intimidating. I agree, intimidating, but it's not impossible. Doctors who collaborate with interdisciplinary teams, let's say engineers, business experts, or even fellow entrepreneurs, can gradually pick up the skills they need. Mentorship plays a huge role in innovative entrepreneurship, especially for us doctors. Having someone to guide you through the financial, legal, or regulatory hurdles can make all a big, big difference. Then I would say the cultural barrier, and we cannot forget that cultural barrier. Many of us grow up in systems where doctors are expected to focus on patient care and research, not entrepreneurship or technology. This cultural mindset can make us hesitant to explore non clinical opportunities. But the truth is, who better to innovate in healthcare than those of us who understand from the inside. We are the insiders. We understand the problem that medical world faces. Doctors have a unique perspective that is invaluable in creating solutions for real world problems. Let me share an example. During the longitude price assessment, I saw startups tackling AMR with innovative diagnostics. Many of them were doctors as advisors or even founders. Their clinical insights shape the technology in ways that is purely technical teams couldn't have achieved. But here is the thing, those doctors didn't stop being doctors. They continued to become being doctors. They simply expanded their roles to make a bigger impact. For our doctors thinking about making this transition, I would say start small. Start small. Take up advisory roles in health tech startups, participate in hackathons or innovation challenges, collaborate with interdisciplinary teams. These are manageable ways to dip your toes in the water without leaving your clinical practice behind. Ultimately, the biggest challenge is believing that you, as a doctor, have something valuable to offer beyond the clinic. And trust me, we do, you do, we do. Our experience, our knowledge, our understanding of patient care, all of this is gold in the health tech space. I will repeat, gold in the health tech space. The transition from it may be look daunting, but once we start, we will see how rewarding it can be contribute to healthcare to a much larger scale.
There are many doctors who have a very in-depth and nuanced understanding of what exactly is needed in terms of innovation in the health tech space, because we ultimately are the link between the new product and the patient, and in many ways we are the end users. However, what do you feel is the perspective of the medtech founders who very often are not from a medical background but typically an engineering or a technology background? And what value do they see in having a doctor as an integral part of the organization or startup? And why should they involve a doctor from the beginning? What are your thoughts on that?
I have interacted with several medtech startups where founders are mostly biotech, biomedical engineers. And they realize the need to involve medics as co founders or as advisors. I have seen companies, startups developing the technology not exactly the way we are the end users, not exactly the way we end users need. Because non medical founders, startup founders, they don't know exactly what we clinicians need. But we clinicians know that. But there is a fault from our side also. We are not willing to collaborate. We are not open up to collaborating with non medics engineers. As we explained, we have so many reasons, our own problems. But non medical startups, they realize that they need medics. What we need is we need to open up. We need to be willing to collaborate with startups. We all know that we have big pharmaceutical companies, big device manufacturers coming to us with products with and drugs with randomized controlled trial evidence, and the products and drug we can just use in our clinical practice. Then people, doctors like us, will think, why should I spend time with these medtech startups? It may take 5 to 10 years to come into the clinical field. Why should I spend time with two or three unknown individuals? We should change that mindset. At the same time, the non-medical, that means the biotech engineers, should also try their best to communicate with doctors, because I'm sure, in my experience, I can tell you that there are several doctors who are willing to collaborate with biomedical engineers, medtech startups. So engineers should be very actively explore and find out such doctors. And this is a collaboration we need. Doctors who are willing to collaborate with medtech entrepreneurs, advisory role, co-founder role, and that's what we need. We need a collaboration and open approach from both sides.
Given your vast experience in the UK, as well as having been a judge on the prestigious prize that you mentioned, how do you view the ecosystem for collaboration between doctors and founders in UK and say US, or maybe globally, and compare it with India as we stand today?
That's a fascinating question. I would say each region has its unique strength and challenges. Let me start with our country, India. India is like an innovation laboratory. It's full of challenges, but also brimming with plenty of opportunities, big opportunities. Our large, diverse population and resource constraints make the need for cost effective solutions urgent. We urgently need cost effective solutions. This creates an ideal ground for innovation. We know that institutions like SICAM in Bangalore, and there are several IITs, are doing a wonderful job in supporting startups. But the involvement of doctors in this ecosystem, that is still very limited. Many of us still think innovation is for engineers, not doctors. That mindset is slowly changing, but we have still a long way to go. The potential, though, is immense. UK, UK has a relatively structured approach to innovation. Initiatives like Longitude Prize show a strong commitment to fostering innovations in healthcare, particularly in diagnostics and technology. But even in UK, the involvement of doctors in innovative entrepreneurship is very limited. Yes, the ecosystem is more cohesive, I would say, and there are opportunities for interdisciplinary collaboration, but many doctors still don't think themselves as part of innovation process. That's a need for a mindset shift in UK too. Doctors in the UK again are largely trained to follow systems and guidelines, and that doesn't always encourage risk taking and entrepreneurship. It's a global issue. Medics need to be entrepreneurs is a global issue, not just an Indian one. Middle East is an exciting space right now. I would say that. An exciting space, especially in countries like UAE and Saudi Arabia, investing heavily in healthcare infrastructure and technology. There's a clear focus on growth like digital health and artificial intelligence. And the governments are playing active role in creating public-private partnership. So there's a huge opportunity there. But the entrepreneurial culture among doctors still evolving at a very early stage. While the opportunities are significant, the involvement of medical professionals in innovation is in very early stage. How can we compare these regions? India stands out for its raw potential and the scale of its challenges, but it can drive global solutions. UK has structure, resources, even there doctors need to embrace innovation more actively. Middle East offers exciting opportunities, strong government backing, but still building its ecosystem for medical entrepreneurship. If you ask me which region has the greatest untapped potential for doctors to step up as innovators, I would say India, without any doubt. Indian doctors are incredibly resourceful and we are adaptable. We find creative solutions in the most challenging circumstances. What we need is a more supportive ecosystem and a change in mindset. One mindset that encourages doctors to think beyond their clinical roles. While we can learn from UK's structured approach or Middle East investment strategies, India has the capability to create its own model, a model that balances our unique challenges with innovative solutions. Because ultimately, innovation is not about copying what works somewhere else. I don't think so. It's about understanding your own context, building solutions that resonate with the challenges and strength of our environment.
Could you just share with us some of the roles that you have played as an advisor to different medtech startups, and that would probably give the other doctors who are listening here on how they could start thinking and exploring on those kind of advisory roles as little baby steps to embrace the entrepreneurship landscape.
In I started Quorum Veda a year ago. Of course, as a senior consultant, as a specialist, we are all advisors to multiple pharmaceutical companies, diagnostic firms as advisors. But that is not innovative entrepreneurship. And also, starting a vaccine clinic or a wellness center or a telemedicine platform are not really innovative entrepreneurship. They are conventional entrepreneurship because the delivery models depend on the existing models. In innovative entrepreneurship, we go beyond the comfort, we venture into areas we haven't done before. And that is innovative entrepreneurship. Now, I advise few medtech startups. I'm an advisor to one of the Longitude Prize finalist startups. I help them to develop the technology further. I advise them how to position the innovation, how to communicate with doctors. Because we know many medtech startups develop wonderful technology. Where do they fail? Because they don't know how to communicate with the large mass of the big community, medical community. If you don't communicate well, if you can't convince your innovation to the medical community, that innovation is a failure. That's where many of the medtech innovators are failing. First, they don't involve doctors from the beginning, and then even if they develop a wonderful technology, they can't convince the medical community. I'm also advising a few other technology startups. I advise an artificial intelligence startup who develop medical technologies. I advise several other startups who are developing medical technologies, especially infection related medical technologies. I concentrate on Indian startups because we need to encourage the Indian system, the Indian innovative entrepreneurship. At the same time, I'm open to advise startups from anywhere in the world. At the same, because the reason is all startups, all innovators are working for the benefit of humanity to save lives. So we need to open our eyes to innovators across the world. But of course, being an Indian, and I always give preference to the Indian startups.
Transitioning to a slightly different vein, one of the other ways in which you tried to create impact was about influencing policy, specifically on antimicrobial resistance. And I think while that is one among the many important areas that the Indian healthcare system needs addressing, There are so many more that we as doctors feel that policy changes are required. They need to be made at the government level. They need to be done on a public health um, point of view. How does one navigate that landscape?
That's a very difficult question, but a very important question. I would say I have been pretty effective to an extent in the area of mobilizing momentum to influence policies for the benefit of the public. I'm the coordinator of the famous Chennai Declaration, an initiative by medical societies in India to tackle the challenge of AMR from Indian perspective. We started the initiative in 2012. It's not just a document, it's an initiative with involvement of almost all important stakeholders, all medical societies, government agencies, non-governmental organizations all coming together. And we published a document called Chennai Declaration, but it did not end as a document. It became a big initiative. That Chennai Declaration initiative was crucial, I would say, played a very important role in convincing the Indian government to initiate serious measures in tackling antimicrobial resistance. I remember in 2013, immediately after publication of the Chennai Declaration, I used to visit Health Ministry almost every month. I used to just, land in the Health Ministry entrance without any appointment. The security knows me. He'll just let me in. I'll meet the joint secretary, other joint secretary. I'll meet the additional secretary, and I'll meet the health secretary. And once in a while, I'll meet the health minister at that time. And because we then together could convince the stakeholders. I remember at that time we had multiple official meetings of the senior most officials in the health ministry or the relevant ministries discussing the Chennai Declaration recommendations. And these are minuted meetings. All this helped in raising the momentum. At the same time, there are other initiatives in India and other countries. Then we could convince the governments of the various countries collectively. The countries came together. Then organizations like WHO, United Nations took the lead. So we all played individual level, initiative level, organization level, countries level. We all played a big role in raising momentum in antimicrobial resistance. I also remember, entering major political party offices in Delhi to take the issue to the parliament. I remember at least there was a discussion in parliament at that time, 2014, at least twice on the issue of antimicrobial resistance. We need to talk to not just medical community. We need to talk to policymakers. We need to talk to politicians. We need to talk to bureaucrats. That we need to communicate with people. If you want to lead or participate in any successful initiative, you need to pick up your phone. You need to open your emails. You need to write letters to all stakeholders. And never be tired. If you feel tired, step back for a moment, but again, start again. You should be perseverant. You should be persistent. You should be consistent. And for several years, I followed all these principles. And then we all believe Chennai Declaration made a significant change. But there were a lot of, I would say, similar initiatives in other countries too. But that was an experience for me in the policy making process. So an experience for me in mobilizing momentum to create a perspective change in the country. And I'm using that experience in supporting MedTech innovators to help them to make that change in the medical community. How to convince the medical community, how to convince the stakeholders that we have a wonderful technology, our country have the ability to innovate, and how can we use that innovation for our patient care.
That's interesting, Dr. Abdul, that you were able to translate the lessons you learned from this initiative onto the other medtech space that you are in currently. And I think that's definitely something that would speak out to a lot of us doctors, that whatever skills we think we have are limited into the field of medicine are not necessarily so. We should have those fungible skills across different roles that we can play, and convince ourselves that yes, we can take the same set of skills, probably better than most other people can, and be able to translate it into different areas like you did, and just learn on from those lessons and move on to what is next. And to tell us a little bit more about your wonderful hobby of painting.
I have painted only very few paintings. Maybe you read my LinkedIn post today. That was a painting I did. No, I'm a very amateurish. Actually, I stopped painting. I painted maybe 4, 5 very ordinary amateurish painting. The one you saw in LinkedIn today, I painted 20 years ago, and it has been in my hospital wall for several years. Yeah, I don't paint anymore. I'm not a good painter. I have never learned painting. I like reading. What is my hobby, if I would say? I read a lot, still I read a lot. I travel, I listen to music, I watch movies, I love pens, I love cars. I would say that, but I'm not rich enough to possess many expensive cars. But I like things that are sophisticated, that needs craftsmanship, that needs ability, that needs innovation. And to enjoy this aspect, to appreciate all this, we don't have to be rich. We don't have to possess. I don't have to possess an expensive car to appreciate an expensive car. I don't have to be rich to appreciate the fine craftsmanship of a pen. Because we need hobbies in our life. I was quite incidentally, few months ago, I was interviewing Dr. Hendrik Wegener. Dr. Hendrik Wegener is the chancellor of Copenhagen University, and he is one person who revolutionized veterinary antibiotic use in Europe. He is the leader in reducing unnecessary growth promotional antibiotic usage in animals. That is one of the major reasons of antimicrobial resistance. At that time, Hendrik Wegener was an activist. He was the expert witness for the European Commission. And all the big pharma companies manufacturing veterinary antibiotics was against Hendrik Wegener. But he was not just an activist. He later he's the chancellor of the Copenhagen University, a very sincere, very efficient administrator. So I asked Hendrik, you have been a very active thought leader, activist. At the same time, you are the chancellor of one of the best universities in the world. Hendrik answered me, Abdul, the secret for that is I smile a lot. You look at Hendrik. Under extreme stress, Hendrik Wegener smiles. When he talks, he smiles. He talks so nice to people. He's a people's man. So becoming a people's man is the secret behind success. You may face stress, but you need to be nice to people, smile to people. Yes, we have all our moments of anger, frustration, especially if you're working with such issues. But at the end of the day, we need to smile. Am I like Hendrik Wegener? I don't think so. I'm not a person who smile always. I wish I would be like Hendrik Wegener. But we all have our strengths. We all have our weakness. We need to find a way forward. If we believe we can make a change, and we can make a change. Yes, we may not become Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, but we can make small changes in our own ways. We all have some level of ability. We just needs to use that ability.
Well, I think as much as you enjoyed listening to and interviewing Dr. Henrik, I enjoyed listening to you and having you share all your thoughts and your wisdom. Is there anything that you would like to share as a parting and ending note?
one thing I would say, people always ask me, okay, I have an idea. I get so many WhatsApp messages. Dr. Ghafur, you are advising entrepreneurs, innovative entrepreneurs. I have a wonderful idea. Then I go through the idea. They're just ideas, and many of them are not really practical. First, if you have an idea, you validate that idea. Talk to your peers, your patients, other stakeholders. Are you trying to really address a problem? Is there a need for that innovation? Early feedback is invaluable. Engage with others and make sure what you want to work is really the need of the hour. And once you validate your idea, you collaborate with people, with engineers, designers, business professionals, and then have your startup, but understand the regulatory challenges. I've seen many MedTech entrepreneurs not really understanding or not really concentrating on the regulatory challenges. The reason is they're all developing technology, working 24 hours. They forget about the regulatory landscape. That one point we should stress. And funding. Don't worry about funding. If your idea is good, if that is practical, there are plenty of sources for funding, and we don't need a lot of money. There are a lot of grant opportunities, like our Indian Barack willing to provide grants. There are angel investors. Then use a support system. Use places like IIT Chennai, CCAM Bangalore. Such incubation centers are highly supportive to startups. Again, have the right mindset. Entrepreneurship is not an overnight success. It needs resilience, learning from failure, and iterating your ideas. Start small. Begin with an advisory role or part-time commitment, then expand that commitment to the real entrepreneurial space. But don't give up your clinical practice entirely. That's my advice. I'm still a full-time clinician, but if you're a serious entrepreneur, having your own busy startup, of course, you have to cut down your clinical practice, but better don't leave your clinical practice entirely. The reason is when you do a clinical practice, still you know the ground realities. And as long as you know the ground realities, you will be able to develop better technology. You will be able to become a better advisor and a better contributor to the whole MedTech ecosystem.
True, Dr. Abdul. I think that's really well put that we need to start thinking first of the problem and then the solution, but not invent solutions that go looking for problems. And also that we actually have a very supportive ecosystem today in India with the grants and with the kind of innovation hubs that the government has come up with. Ultimately, I think it's up to us to make the mindset shift, grab those opportunities, and start taking small steps. Don't give up your clinical practice, because that's that invaluable tool you bring in terms of real world experience and user case experiences, apart from the fact that it's what you are trained to do for 15, 20 years. Dr. Abdul, and I really enjoyed this conversation. We hope we'll have you again sometime on the podcast. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I really enjoyed it. I believe it will be useful for the, those doctors who want to be innovative entrepreneurs. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.